Hi, everyone, and welcome to this book celebration. I want to start off by saying how thankful I am for everyone who purchased a copy, all of the feedback that you've sent. If you're one of those people, I want to give you my direct and heartfelt appreciation. I'm looking forward to having a discussion tonight about the book and the process and maybe some of the things it's stirred up in you if you've read it. If not, I look forward to hearing it after you do. The encouragement that's come my way has been very inspiring. So I really want to say thank you to everyone and want to welcome you and look forward to the discussion tonight about the book. And I want to also introduce Amber Lyn. She is the Community Relations Director at Pathway to Hope. She is a life coach, author, and speaker. So we are excited tonight to be able to have some time together and talk about these things. And Amber's going to sort of lead the discussion and check the chat, and I'm going to try to organize my sentences in the fashion that makes sense.
Like I've told you in Pathway to Hope, you're a great multitasker, but not when it comes to tech stuff like this.
No,
You need
no,
some help. It's how
no.
can you
Yeah, when and
have
usually,
conversations and focus?
generally when I talk to someone, I want to talk to them directly instead of being distracted.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, thank you for having me. Yeah, again, I'm Amber
Yes.
Lyn. What you can expect tonight is I have some questions for Patrick, just about the process of the book and look forward to hearing his thoughts and what was things that he enjoyed, maybe some difficulties. And then after that, we're going to open it up to live calls. So if you wanted to talk with Patrick and share about how the book impacted you, that would be the time for that. And then after that, we're going to do a Q&A. So if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat, or we may even just take some live calls then too. I know you would really enjoy doing that when we do that in Pathway to Hope. So
Yeah.
either way, I'll watch out for your hands, and we'll have some fun interactions and hopefully get some of your questions answered. I imagine the book has stirred up some questions.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Also, hopefully, giving you some answers.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so first question is, what inspired you to write the book?
Um, Really, what inspired me was pain. Um, just watching people suffer, watching women suffer in the church, my own suffering from what I went through. And I remember when you and I started talking about Pathway to Hope, it was one of my inspirations was, what I saw all the time was that women didn't have a safe place to be to talk about these things. They didn't have a safe place to get information that was not agenda driven, you know. And I wanted also to have something that was available any time of the day or night. So that was the inspiration that you and I had, Amber, about starting Pathway to Hope. And then what I realized is that, video series and web membership program is great, but there's something special about a book. And, as somebody who's read thousands of books, they've been a lifeline to me. And so I felt just really like it was really important to turn a lot of those concepts that I had developed for Pathway to Hope and put it into written form so people could have them in that way.
Awesome. Yeah. What did you enjoy most about the process?
I didn't have a lot of enjoyment in the process, if
That's
I'm really
honest.
honest.
Mhm.
Um, so, you know, you're going to get your full price of admission tonight. So I discovered in the process of writing the book that it was triggering some of my own trauma. And I think that's why it took so long. Uh, at the time, I didn't really understand as I was going through it. And I don't know, maybe some of the folks here can relate to this, but I would have a deadline or I'd need to do something and I would have lots of internal resistance. But I didn't really know that's what it was. I just had a bunch of other things to do instead. I always was able to find something else to do instead of that thing that I was supposed to do for the book. Um, And in the process of wrestling around with this, one of the things that came to the forefront was that one of the specific parts of my childhood trauma was that my dad uh, used to say I was stupid, and I believed him. I believed him until I was in my probably mid 20s. I started to realize maybe that wasn't true. And I had never really read a whole book until I was in my 20s because I believed I was stupid. So I didn't know it, but subconsciously I was getting triggered by writing a book that kind of goes against the belief that you're stupid. So, and while on one hand, I would have told you, oh, I know I'm not, and and look at my career and blah, 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 blah. But there was something really deeper about this that really took some time, and I'm very grateful now. Um, while I hope the book brings great freedom and clarity to others, it already has for me and helped me heal that very deep wound. And so that was a joyful part of the process, but it wasn't fun.
Mhm.
Excuse me, it was very meaningful. And but one of the things I enjoy the most is the feedback that I get from the book. People telling me their experiences, telling me what, you know, meaning it has or how it's impacted them in a positive way. And this is now, from my perspective, this is my most cherished part of the process is now that the book's out, I have the opportunity to go out and talk about it. I get to talk about the issues that are in the
Mhm.
book. I get to talk about the situations that people are in. I get to bring light and put some light on this issue. I hope, particularly within the church, and I hope that there's some controversy about some of the things I've said. I hope people get a little in the church get a little irritated so we can have the conversation. Or maybe they just get convicted and want to, get more information. But either way, this is a very important conversation to have. And, you know, some podcasts coming up in December and in the new year. So we're going to start talking about it more. And hopefully more and more people can get validation of their pain, clarity of how to cope, and freedom from the trap of being in abuse.
Awesome. Was there anything, I know when you write and even when you speak, it comes from such an authentic, like deeply personal way.
Yeah.
Was there anything that you were like nervous about with putting the book out?
Oh my gosh. Yes. I had a lot of trepidation about telling my story. Um, you know, I was a public figure, still am. I was on the radio and TV, and there's a lot of things that I didn't say during that process where I covered it up. I was in denial. So, uh, you know, that was a concern for me. Um, Telling my story, talking about all that stuff, that was a difficult part. And then I went back and forth over a bunch of things that I did to do some editing, and I think this is also part of what took as long as it did is that I was maturing during the time that, and I was doing PTH and I was talking to lots of women and I was learning more and I was experiencing more and I was seeing what was happening and I was seeing what a safe environment was doing and I was seeing the impact of the things I was talking about, and so there was a lot of movement, and so I always wanted to like keep editing to bring it up to speed, and then I was also nervous about some of the things I was saying about the church. And then I got clarity and I was like, these things need to be said. So it was my own story and then some of the stuff I was saying about it, the church, particularly having had been a pastor and been part of the problem from my perspective.
Mhm. Was there something specific in there that you mentioned about the church that you were nervous about putting out?
Just the fact that I think the church is failing, and I wouldn't encourage people as a rule to go to the church. When
Mm.
my whole career previously as a pastor, I was encouraging people to go to the church all the time. That was my thing. Go to the church, get biblical counseling, get God's word, da, 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 da. And I didn't realize it, but in this instance of abuse, emotional abuse specifically, that was sending people into harm's way. And one of the things that inspired this was, like I said, watching people get hurt, watching the church fail over and over and over again. And so one of the things that helped me was I've always had this belief. I've lived by this mantra. The mantra is this: uh, you don't have the right to point out the dirt on someone unless you're willing to wash their feet. So if you're not willing to get involved, we don't really want to hear your opinion. So as someone who spent 30 plus years washing the feet of the church, working with people within the church, working with pastors, working, doing ministry, planning a church, all that stuff, I'm like, I am preeminently qualified to make these statements. So that was one of the things that helped me get over the fear that I had of what would happen. Because I've seen people get gobbled up by the church not liking what they've said. I've seen the impact of that, and up close and personal, I've counseled those guys. And then I realized that, being silent when there's abuse is to take the side of abuse.
Mm,
So I was very like convicted, like I can't be silent anymore. I mean, not that I ever really was, but I wanted to be more pronouncedly unsilenced.
mhm,
If you know what I mean. I wanted to make a real point. And so I believe that the book does do that. That's my hope, at least.
mhm. Well, as somebody who read through it multiple times, helping you,
Mhm.
figure out edits and things like that too. One of the people, there's what, how many? 4, 5 different edits?
Yeah, aside from the beta readers, um, 4
Yeah,
editors.
yeah.
5. Must not forget about Miss Renee. She was the
Yeah,
beginning of it all.
yeah, exactly. Well, like again, as someone who's read it through multiple times and who's raised in the church, I never felt like, oh, he's talking bad about the church. I just
Um,
felt like a lot of love and care and like
mm,
passion for this and coming from a place of like I messed up and we need to do better and I want to be a
yes.
part of this. And
Mhm.
so it wasn't like I didn't feel like you were like shaking your finger. You were just really loving and caring the way that you address that, from
Yeah.
my perspective.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of that comes from my own failure, and so I'm a little sensitive to that because, I did do the harm.
Hmm.
And I mean, again, I was never my intention. When I was doing it, I was 100% convinced that what I was doing is helpful until you realize you're not.
Yeah.
And then that's to me the difference between maturity and becoming part of the problem is, will you accept the reality that you're being revealed, or are you going to deny it? And I couldn't deny it anymore. I just saw so much harm. I just couldn't, and it cost me a lot to make that change. But
Hmm.
it's also gave me a lot, and it's gained me a lot.
Yeah.
And I believe that when you do what is, what what your gut is revealing to you, what the spirit is revealing to you, that leads you to a good place, even
Hmm.
if it's hard.
Hmm. Anybody have any questions in the chat? Feel free to put them in and I'll make sure and look out for them. I'm kind of going off paper now here, so you just throwing out questions, but
Okay.
um, was there a chapter that you enjoyed writing or reviewing the most and why?
Um, well, the chapter I think is most important is the one about getting clear. And I think that's kind of the fulcrum of change. But the one that was most enjoyable to me was the one about my trip to see Eugene, because that was such an amazing, and there's a whole backstory that we don't have time for here, but in my life, the moment that that trip took place and the fact that we got to meet Eugene, somebody who had transformed me through his writings for years, and the interaction that we got to have with him was so beautiful. And it was happening at a moment in my life that that validation. uh, was the difference between me giving up, I think, at times, and me not. So to reread that and rewrite that and edit that and just live in that story, it was that was that was a beautiful thing.
Hmm. So you said the difference between giving up. What do you mean by that?
Well, I was in a lot of pain at that time because I was going through the process of my divorce from my ex. I was going through the process of being judged and divorced by the church, the one that I started, and a lot of the people there. And so I was going through a lot of loss, and from a lot of loss from people that were spiritually important in my life, and that I thought we had something other than what it turned out to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so to be able to have that intimacy with Eugene and it be so visceral and so real and watching him cry and
Mm-hmm.
be with us in such a profound way. And I, I was just so, I felt so cared about in a, from a cosmic sense, from the heavens intervening, which I had not felt that at all since the whole process started of my public announcement of divorce.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Mm, yeah.
Before we get into live calls, one last question, and you kind of touched on it already, but just curious, what's your hope for with this book as it continues to go out and now it's out forever at this
Um,
point? You can't pull it back now.
well, I could just stop the presses, but um, like always, my hope is that people who are suffering quietly, suffering secretly, suffering openly, suffering loudly, and feel alone, the book will validate them that they're A, not crazy, and B, they're not alone, and C, that they're loved and cared about. And I know for me, being cared about was way more important than the information. The information is important, and that's why I wrote the book. But being able to find people that you feel safe with and you're able to talk to honestly, to me, that's one of the things I hope the book does is it inspires that process where people start to stop being secretive, stop being in denial, stop rationalizing, minimizing, justifying, denying, spiritualizing, and just 1% more honest. 1% more honest changes your life. And then that might lead to 1.5, and that might lead to 2, and that might lead, and the more we live in reality, the better off we are. And it goes back to one of my core beliefs: the avoidance of pain is the beginning of all unhealthy behavior. So, in an abusive environment, the avoidance of pain is how we live, it's how
Mhm.
we survive. So, we can't heal an abusive environment by being in avoidance. So, hoping the
Mhm.
book is a lifeline and a safety net, place of
Mhm.
revelation and safety and hope and community.
Mhm. It's beautiful. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
So Rod from the chat says incredible in the book and what you do is incredible. Thanks so much for writing it and getting it out there. There's now no limit to who and how many you help. Love you both. So Rod was pretty pivotal in our editing. So thanks for coming, Rod, and congratulating and celebrating with us because you're a
Yes.
big part of this. So
Yes.
and it was fun to hear how the book even inspired you as a man. Thought
Yeah.
that was really neat too. Yeah.
Yeah. Rod, Rod was able to push me over the finish line.
Big thanks to Jenna Love also.
Yes. I don't know if Jen is
Oh,
here or not, but she
yeah.
was another one that really was pivotal. With Renee in the very beginning.
Yeah.
Well, it's just
No,
so many people. And,
big readers. Mhm.
and the other thing this book, is also true. Pat Feld as well, correct? He did the cover art, which I thought was, he did a fantastic job.
Mhm.
Um, uh, you know, the women that were vulnerable enough and loving enough to allow me to participate in their stories, be part of it, are also why this book exists. And why the wisdom that's in it is there is because of working with them and seeing the reality and having conversations, having thousands of conversations with thousands of women from every walk of life and different countries, and really helped me like boil stuff down.
Mhm.
And I don't think you can I don't think you can approach this successfully from a didactic position, like a seminar position. This is something that has to come. The nuances of abuse are so intense that if someone doesn't understand, you'll know.
Mhm.
And what you need to do is feel safe, not and not be doused with more things to do. Most of the women I talk to are like up to their eyeballs in things they have to do. What they need is validation and hope and clarity. And 9 times out of 10, their gut's already telling them this.
Mhm. Yeah. All right, well, let's take some live calls. We're going to start with Elisa, Judy, and then Shelly. I see your hand up, so we'll come get to you third. Let me get that set up here. Just takes a
I'm going to
second.
talk to people?
Yeah.
Wow, the amazingness of the internet.
All right, Lisa, you there?
Lisa,
I'm here. Hi, can you guys hear me?
I can.
Yes, can hear you.
Oh, you
Thanks for
guys are
being.
like a big warm hug. I wish I could come through there, like, and jump over. Congratulations. Like a
You're welcome.
million congratulations. I'm so happy for you guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for being a part of this process too. I know
Mhm.
Lisa is part of Pathway to Hope. She was one of the beta readers, and so I did ask her to come on, and I wanted to hear from her perspective how the book impacted her and kind
Yes.
of where she's at today. So yeah, I guess we could just start there. Whatever comes to mind, but what was it about Patrick's book that impacted you?
Okay, first off, do we have a time limit? As you both know, I could go on forever. It sounds really dramatic to say, oh, life changing, but I'm not kidding. I honestly, it's been years now that I've been hearing my Staples easy button, Patrick, all of your go towards the buzzsaw, like all these things that are coming into my head even right now. It's been a while since I've been on the community,
Yeah.
but the new seeds that you planted
Mm,
in this book, it for me being part of Pathway to Hope, I was fortunate enough to hear your message for these last few years.
mm,
But what I love about this book is
mm,
I feel like it took these last few years
mm,
and put it in a nice little quick guide for
mm.
somebody who hasn't been had the luxury of hearing all of that information and all those years and investing the time.
Interesting. Hmm. I appreciate you saying that. That's encouraging.
Well, and as usual, like, what surprised me, I have to tell you, is it surprised me when you talked a little bit about being nervous about putting it out there. And I think that's understandable because it's such a big feat, but the
Mhm.
way that I perceive you and the ease of how this information flows from you
Mm,
and the confidence and I think the clarity, like the rooted, quick to not waver and the repetitive nature of it, it did surprise me to find out that you were, nervous or not confident about it. Because I'm like, I want to shout it from the rooftops. Like, well, I'm on a book tour. When are we leaving?
tomorrow.
Yeah. And it's well deserved. The thing is this information with so much of it out there
Mm,
and us so desperate for it or potentially leaning in to the wrong place, and getting well-intentioned people, but perhaps getting misinformation. And then this is like, no, look at, we genuinely see you. It's so unusual, Patrick, to have a male voice, especially when the abuse and the neglect is coming from a male. It's really difficult to trust a male voice and allow that space in there.
That's a good point. I appreciate you saying that.
You're just high value. And I want to tell, I want to piggyback on what Amber said too about the church coming in. I feel the same, that I never perceived that from you. What I perceived from you was a deeper connection to the Holy Spirit and bridging that gap for me and connecting me to that. In fact, wanting me to have a desire to have a better relationship because of that.
Right.
You really, the love that you show and the compassion when you've been harmed and the growth that you've been able to overcome. It's inspiring for us.
Yeah.
I mean, really, it's just amazing, Patrick. I don't know how to thank you and Amber both. Amber, you're the translator, the the one who will also take the extra time to, help us articulate what we need to articulate as well. So just invaluable. And I just couldn't be happier for you guys.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on and sharing that, and showing your courage to do so. Just put yourself out there, but thank you for doing that tonight.
Oh, you know what? Actually, this was easy peasy. Like, this is like, I could do this. I mean, where else you need me to be?
Yeah, what are you doing on Thursday?
Yeah, I'm in. Like, the thing is, this doesn't feel, I'm not nervous. I'm not, like I said, if there's a time limit, cut me off when you need to, but I could go on for hours. And there's just so much I want to say about it. The safe harbor, oh my gosh, the first thing, Patrick, by the way, even right now, it makes me want to cry thinking about it. Not even going grocery shopping with your mom and sitting there in the chair. It's just so profound that it just sticks there. It's like haunting for all of us caring, empathetic people.
Yeah.
To know that happened to you. But again, now I want to jump out and just hug you.
On the book tour, you'll get that chance.
Awesome. Thank you, Lisa, again.
Anytime, guys. I love you guys both. Thank you.
Love you back.
All right, we'll go to Judy next.
Okay.
Judy, you there?
Can you hear me now?
Beauty.
Yeah. Okay.
I can hear you now.
Okay,
Awesome.
great. Well, I have to say congratulations first.
Thank you.
So excited. Oh my gosh, I read this and I had to go slow because it was so thick, there's so much in this book that was just such a blessing for me. And I took some notes, like what I thought were just parts of this book that just stood out to me.
Okay.
And one of the statements like you make, like reconciliation is not trust, and that was good for me to hear. And I thought, God, that's so good. I mean, there's so many books that don't say this kind of stuff because it's church-based, right? And that twist in the church and the way the church takes things and puts it back on you. Well, you need to reconcile, well, the person isn't trustworthy. I can't do that. And that's nice. Good for you. You want to be married to him? Okay. Come on down. I got a seat for you. Pull up a chair. And then the other thing was, where you talk about trusting your gut. And I hear your words in my mind, and I've listened to, I mean, I'm a binge watcher, in the beginning, I watched all of your videos. So I would sit there and go, oh, thank God he's got like, 2005 on here. No, but I mean, I could go back and listen to all those videos. And so the book, when I was listening, I could hear parts of you coming
Yes.
out from what you've said in the past, right? To
Yeah.
others. And like trusting your gut, like listening to the Holy Spirit talking to me. And I've noticed that it's increased. The discernment in my life has so increased. And getting the abuser out of my house made that increase. And so when I hear it, like since I've read the book, I'm saying it more to myself. And maybe because it's in writing,
Yeah.
I'd say, trust your gut, Judy, trust your gut.
Yeah.
Trust your gut. What's the Holy Spirit saying to you right now? Right.
Yes.
So I'm in a situation, I feel uncomfortable, but I don't feel safe. Okay, that's true. Go with that. And that is good because I lost that in 30 years of a marriage to that.
Yes.
Yes, it was, and then you give validation to the insanity. And and reading the words about what I've been living has been kind of like a cathartic experience. Like it's like I'm reading words and I'm all, yeah, this person really gets it. You get what it is. And I, like the other person said about, the church aspect is big, that's what kept me in my game. And yeah, so that's been really good because validation, getting out of narcissistic abuse is huge.
Yeah.
I mean, we need everybody telling us, you're right, you're right. You're not a lunatic.
Yes.
And then I wrote down, there's a part in there that really struck me was when you don't want to believe the abuser is so bad, we try to tell ourselves he's a really good person because we don't want to believe that person is that bad. And you brought that up in the book. And because then it's like delusion or denial in ourselves, trying not to look at how bad it really is.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, that has stuck with me.
Yeah.
That one. And then the love that comes through the pages. Oh my, this makes me cry. Is so comforting. It gives you courage, as if to say, you can do this. It's like a coaching book also of hope. And so what I got out of it was like, I can make it. I can do this. It's going to be hard, but it will get easier. And I felt like that was like a coaching type of book that's kind of in there. I don't know how to explain it. Where some books are just, you read it, but it doesn't make you feel like encouraged to, like, I can get in there and do this. I can, I can run this race or whatever, and I can do it. And I got that. And also, I feel like your passion for this comes through in the book, where you can feel as if you're sitting right there on the couch next to me saying, what? This guy's a lunatic. He's delusional. So it feels like that. Like when I'm reading, I'm like, oh God, he's telling me right now, like this guy's like, and that is so comforting.
Good.
And I know a lot of the people probably feel that, like as they share their stories here, ask you questions, and then you get right back in to their face and tell them, look at that's delusional, or whatever. And so anyways, that's what it feels like, at least to me when I was reading it, more encouragement and that kind of stuff. As I'm listening, reading, it really put forth that in my mind.
So happy to hear that, Judy. I'm so grateful you said that. It means a lot to me to hear that. That was one of my hopes, is that you would feel that comfort, that sort of arm around you, like we can do this. We can do this.
Yeah, because you're so alone in it.
Yep.
And because so many people don't understand like covert abuse, and They have no clue, especially the Christian covert stuff is just, there's no real understanding, of that.
It's true.
Yeah. And it's really good. So that's what I wanted to put my little my little bit of input here
Thank you,
tonight.
Judy.
So
Yeah, appreciate you coming on and
Thank you,
being
Judy.
willing to share.
Appreciate
Yeah.
it.
okay.
Have a good night.
Okay.
Just wanted to open up to anyone else that might be interested in sharing about the book specifically, and then we'll hop into questions after that. So feel free, there's like a raise your hand button if you want to get on a call with Patrick and just talk to him about the book specifically. And if not, that's okay too. We can just head right into the question and answer. All right, I see Heather's hand. All right, Heather, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to say real quick that for me, your book was like an anchor to clarity and the ability to be honest when at a time in my life when I was surrounded by people that were trying to push me back into the denial of and second guessing, of what I was really experiencing. And so it just gave me permission to continue to be honest. And it was like one of the few safe places I had to actually face what I was experiencing with honesty. So I really appreciate that. And I just feel like it's such a gift, like everyone else was saying, to have your experience and wisdom written down in a book where people can turn to those pages anytime they want, and they have that there to help inspire them and give them the validation they need in their situations.
It is definitely, I've heard that repeatedly, Heather, that, and I think it's just true that there is something different about a book. And by the way, I know you're going to be a published author here pretty soon too.
Yes, soon.
I've worked my way through part of your book, and I'm very inspired by what you're doing.
Thank you.
We'll talk in detail about that later, but uh, the 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 transformation that happens when we're able to understand things like that, like you said, like the clarity and the safety. I'm just so happy that that's the case, and you were able to navigate through that. And knowing a lot about your circumstance, I know that it was not your garden variety difficulty. You were in Olympic level difficulty. So
Well, I couldn't have done it without either of you.
well, okay. But I'm not taking credit for all those difficult decisions you made, and all the harm that you endured, and the courage that you displayed in making those difficult decisions and protecting yourself and your children.
Well, thank you.
You are quite courageous and inspirational in that way.
Appreciate hearing that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for your help and being a beta reader and being encouraging. That's all. None of that is unnoticed.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it.
Anybody else about the book specifically? And then we'll just hop into the questions and answers. Okay, what about questions for Patrick? Can be about your situation, can be about something in the book you were wanting to know more about. You can put a question in the chat or raise your hand and get you on the call here. If not, I have a couple that came through too we can go over. We'll start with that, and I'll look for your guys' questions. One of the questions was actually I saw earlier was are you going to do an audiobook version?
Yes. Definitely going to do an audiobook version. Working on it now. The details of that and trying to get that set up. And it's a little difficult because where I'm at, there's not the kind of studios that we need, and I'm also going to read it myself, so that's another complication because you have to have a producer and different things. So, yeah, but it's going to happen for sure.
Okay. You said something about a book tour locations. Peter wants to know.
Book tours, or we're in the I would say the beginning stages of developing that. As the podcasts go out and we get a little more momentum, we'll be looking at that. But if you have locations in mind, you have ideas for where you're at, please send us an email, let us know. We're willing to go and do pretty much whatever we can. So whatever's within our possibilities. So yeah, we're open to doing that and having book signings or book celebrations. I don't know, whatever we can do to promote that. And I personally would love to meet people. The whole behind the camera thing here and doing Zoom stuff is great, but I'd much rather be in a situation where we're, at a bookstore or we're at, a church or a coffee shop or I don't know, whatever, and we're able to see each other and talk to each other. I prefer that.
Yeah, or even speaking events. If you guys have any ideas
Yes.
or a place you'd want him to come and speak and
Yes.
then also sign his book, that's also something that's in the
Yep.
works. So
Yep.
locations, question mark, I guess.
Yeah.
Is that Georgia is something that's definitely on the list. California, obviously West Coast. But
They're
yeah,
just places where we already have connections and people have said they are interested. So,
for sure.
but yeah, definitely speaking to. I'm looking forward to that part of it.
Any other questions in the chat or hands? Want to talk to Patrick? One of the questions that came through before we started this was, how do you combat the feelings of not being enough?
That's a great question. So the messaging that develops the idea that I'm not enough comes from childhood generally, or it comes from an abusive relationship, or both. And the other thing is we have some theology that also supports that. You're no good, and if you don't do these certain things, then God's going to kill you, punish you, send you to hell, whatever, depending on your theology. So if you believe you're no good, I believe that's 100% the opposite of how you were created. No little kid comes into the world thinking they're terrible. That's something that is learned through unhealthy circumstances, toxic people around them, whatever. So to combat the idea that you're not good enough is you have to start to identify whose voices those are. So I talk about it like this. Everybody has a committee in their head, and the committee in your head is accusing you this and you're not that, and what about this and that. And I would encourage you to pay attention to that. What are they saying, and who in your life has said that to you? Every committee has a chairman. So you want to identify who's the major voice who's sending you those negative messages. And then as you do that, okay, that's in my case, 100% my dad. My dad is the undisputed champion of negative messaging. And so once I discovered, oh, it's my dad, now to go from I'm not good enough to I am valuable, the way you do that is by appropriately assigning responsibility. So when I'm a kid and my dad's beating me and telling me these horrible things, I believe that I'm the problem, and I believe I'm the reason why he's beating me. Well, that's not true. My dad is a 3-war veteran, PTSD alcoholic. If I was 1,000 kids, he'd be saying and doing exactly the same thing. So once you start to appropriately assign the blame, you can change the message from I'm a problem, I'm defective, I'm less than, I'm not worth the skin I'm printed in, to my dad was harmful and that hurt me, and I can grieve the loss of that, and then I can maintain my value. But denial, rationalize, minimize, justify, spiritualize, avoid will only strengthen the voices that say you're the problem. And this is where all of us have trouble. I don't want to look at that stuff. I don't want to feel that stuff. And I always say to people like, look, I wouldn't encourage you to go looking for anything. Just deal with whatever shows up. You're driving down the road, minding your own business, trying to have a nice day, and what happens? You have a memory about something. You have a negative thought come into your mind. Start with what shows up. Don't go looking. You're trying to go to sleep. Whatever. You're washing the dishes. You're having a conversation with someone, and then in your mind you're saying they think I'm stupid, or they think I'm crazy, or they don't like me, and they're not saying anything like that, but we're making it in our head. So where's that coming from? This is also why I really encourage documentation, because that helps you get clarity. Oh, I was really thinking this about myself, and I was thinking, oh, where does that come from? Instead of the avoidance. So as you appropriately assign blame, that's going to shift your value. And check out chapter, I think it's 5, clarity. That's the clearing and clarity, I think is what it's called. So check that out. That'll help.
Okay. Question. My husband hasn't cried for decades and his counselor who wants him to watch sad movies. Do you have additional suggestions? And I'm afraid I am abusive to my spouse in response to 17 years of neglect. I'm worried I am the abuser. We actually hear that a lot.
Yeah.
So a couple questions there. One is, husband hasn't cried for decades. Counselor wants him to watch sad movies. What do you think about that? Do you have other suggestions? Start there.
Well, first of all, that's not going to work. Because the reason why your husband isn't crying is because he has so much denial. He's avoiding everything, which is why he's been abusing you for all these years. And your reactivity to him is normal when he's been harming you for so long. So think of an open wound on your body. You got an open wound right here. And every day or every other day or 5 times a day, he takes his salty finger and jabs it in your wound that he created. So I don't care how spiritual, how strong, how moral, fill in the blank, I don't care how much of anything you are. When somebody jabs your wound, you're going to react because it's normal. If somebody jabs your wound and you don't react, there's a problem. Okay? So your reactivity is normal. And this is something all people, abusers, and anybody else who has, there's a lot of people who have high levels of denial, same levels of denial as somebody who's abusive. That level of denial is those people believe their own lies. So it doesn't matter what you say, they believe whatever they think. Okay? So when you have somebody that has that level of denial, one of the things they always do is they want to talk to you about whatever they're talking about, if they talk at all, about the situation minus the context. So, well, I'm sorry that I hurt you, but they're not aware that they've hurt you for 17 years and never owned it once. So at this point, if I stacked up the level of injustice they've done to me, and then I stacked up the level of anger that would be appropriate, I would murder them in their sleep. That would be appropriate based on the way they've been treating you. So your husband's denial is industrial strength. And watching sad movies won't touch that. Sorry.
Well,
Because he doesn't have the capacity to access his emotions because he's been shutting them down probably since he was a kid.
well, and who gets to define what a sad movie is? Isn't that kind of different for everyone a little bit?
Well, exactly. That's exactly it. And so the counselor's trying to get him to access his emotions. He cannot. And I would suspect, if I had to guess, your husband has less than optimal childhood or some experiences that created this ability for him to shut things off. And so, I don't think you're the problem. And I think your reactivity is normal to someone harming you all the time. Don't take that responsibility or blame. It's not your fault. He needs to be responsible for being harmful. He's not going to do that. So that's the impasse. If he was going to do that, I'm sure he would have done it by now, because I'm sure you've offered him more than one opportunity.
I think you touched on it a little bit, but her second part was, I'm afraid I'm the abusive spouse.
No,
Responsible for the 17 years of neglect. What are your thoughts on that?
I just said it. She's not no. You're responding appropriately to being harmed for 17 years. You should be reactive. You should not like him. You should be shut down. That would be appropriate when he's treated you or mistreated you for all these years. And that's true for anybody. The problem, what's abnormal, is we put up with it for so long. That's the abnormal part. We shouldn't be putting it up with it, but we have all kinds of reasons: our family history, our church situation, who knows, lots of reasons, kids, money. There's lots of reasons why we stay. I mean, I did it. I was 10 years before I left. I knew that it was never going to change. And I rationalized and I minimized and I justified and I spiritualized like a madman. And I denied stuff so that I could survive. I didn't want to deal with the consequences. I was afraid with lots of things. So we all do that. So don't dislocate your hip to kick yourself in the rear.
Is there a significance between maltreatment and abuse? He said the later seems to be a big word that maybe we should keep for the bigger stuff. Curious your thoughts on
Well,
that.
I think that's something definitely to look at. I always want to say that the abuse or the maltreatment, whatever we want to discern it as, is in the eyes of the person who's receiving the treatment. The person who's giving it doesn't get to make that decision. And so this is why I always encourage people to be honest about what they're experiencing instead of rationalizing, minimizing, justifying, spiritual, all those things. We have to be honest. And that honesty leads us to grief and pain and freedom. Avoidance is the beginning of all unhealthy behavior. And those are just the undeniable two roads.
What can my sister do who is severely depressed and anxious and is feeling despair? She is unable to separate from her emotionally abusive husband because of her mental health and no money. She's afraid that she will never feel better.
As long as she's being abused, she will not. I wish that I could tell you some magic formula. But when you live in abuse, I talk about in the book, it's the systematic destruction of your soul by another person. And you're not supposed to feel good when you're being abused. You're supposed to feel terrible. So no, she won't get any better as long as she stays in that situation. And listen, I don't have any judgment for anybody who stays. I get it. I understand why. It's sad. And some people can't. Some people can. I don't know. I don't care. I'll be with you either way, but I'm not going to tell you that there's some magic way to get around it. There's not. You got to live in reality, and reality is what will help you get better, not your denial of it. So, I think your sister could do some work on being honest, which would help her. She'd get into more grief, but that would also disconnect her from the abuser, which would help her. Trying to stay connected to someone's harming you, there's nothing good that comes from that.
Okay. All right.
That's right, Lisa. Rule number 1, no crazy allowed. Rule number 2, I get to decide what's crazy.
Nothing time. Is there anything that you would like to end on? Any last words or?
I am grateful. That's what I would like to end on. I'm grateful for all of the feedback. I'm grateful for everybody who bought a copy for themselves or someone else. And I'm grateful for all the reviews. And if you have read the book and you haven't left a review, please go to Amazon.com and leave a 5-star review, not anything else. You're free to do whatever you want, actually. But so yeah, I'm just really grateful for everyone's support and care, and I look forward to the future and talking about these things more and doing on bigger platforms and affecting more people and helping spread the freedom.
Yeah, thank you everyone for coming and we're celebrating the launch of Death of a Thousand Cuts.
Mhm.
Long time coming. So again, congratulations, Patrick, on that,
Thank you.
and all your hard work and time spent. And thanks for being vulnerable today and sharing. If you guys want to learn more about Pathway to Hope, it is open. You can go to the website, it's patrickdoyle.life. We do question and answers like this twice a month. I guess we'll hopefully see them in person, is what you were saying, in the
Mhm.
future.
Yes, I would love that.
All right. Have a good night, everyone.
All right. Thanks, guys.